Hello, traders. Greg here. We were just having a great discussion in the green room about this bottoming action down here on the 5 minute and about thinking about going long. And so, with that discussion, I was pointing out that, let me just drag this away here a little bit. I'll get to that. I was pointing out, you know what, there's really nothing here to the left. Let me drag this down. All right, there's that little thing right there, but it's really not much, but prices are stabilizing for the moment. Ticks are still relatively neutral. We didn't get any really low ticks down here, but that was only about minus 700, give or take, minus 800. You always like to see like a minus 1,000 or damn close to it. Anyway, it was the most extreme part during the day, and things began to stabilize. And then it came down. We got a pivot. It came down and tested that pivot. Buyers stepped up again, so they're using that reference point. And on days like this, it's always better, I found it's always better to buy near that support rather than to buy a breakout. Now, I'm not saying that buying a breakout can't work, but you better give it a lot of room because this is a negative day. And so you've got a lot of people now that maybe were buying on the way down and they're holding losses. That's actually a 2 minute here. I wanted to point something else out. I usually look at the 5 minute, but I was looking at a little more detail. Um, and that I mentioned that, hey, there's no pivots here, which means the selling is strong on the way down when there's no pivots because it can't retrace very far. So one of the things that I look for on the 5 minute is if it's trending down all day, is the back of the downtrend broken? Define that. Well, trading above major resistance, the pivot high prior to a lower low. And it did that. So now there's enough information to start considering long. There's no big wide range bars. I explained, the tick difference there. This was lower and what we call a tick divergence. It made a higher low while the index made a lower low. So that's a good sign for bottoming action. Now it's going sideways and you got, these pivot highs and a pivot low. And so can it break out? It's a little after 1 o'clock, not a great time of day. We'll see. Now, the AD line here, this chart that I had here, what kind of day is it that we can measure? Well, it started off pretty darn negative down there. We've had days minus 2,000, kind of really nasty days. So being at a minus 1,000 area, give or take, you can see 900 or so. It's not a super bear day, but there's been quite a bit of improvement. I don't pay too much attention to these put-call ratio trends in intraday, but usually look at this chart on a daily chart to see the breadth and sentiment. But the AD line, I do look at that intraday to see what the number is and which way that is trending. All right, so let me minimize that. And so then we discussed, well, this really isn't on something of significance. We went and looked at the Qs because sometimes one index will be on support and another one won't. So what we then talked about was the fact that the Qs broke down through this prior pivot low. So the pivots are an area. And a lot of times breaking the low actually is what gets the retracement going. So we've got a bottoming tail bar on the 65 minutes. So that's a good sign. If we had even more things aligned, now that would have been really, really far away. Could it have come down to the 50 MA, which would have been then lined up with this pivot? But that would have been such an extreme move in one day. Not that it's not possible, because you see the size of this bar here, and you see the size of this one or this one, and it's even bigger. So it's certainly possible to have a range expansion of that size. Now, I would love to get a dip down here. Now, so far, it's bullish price action. That bullish price action does not align with my bias to get a dip down here, yet it's not going up. And it might just be because time of day, it's lunchtime. Now, if it was to maybe have a dip and flip right back up again to get like a correction bar type of thing, that would give me a lot more confidence than these little narrow range bars. In other words, a range expansion bar, some kind of spike down that would then confirm to me that there's strong enough demand to drive it back up again. That's the kind of pattern that would give me a lot more confidence for going long versus just this type of stability. In addition, we looked at IWM. And we saw that came down to the 50 MA and those pivots, and it began to stabilize. So part of the discussion led to utilizing different indices, and that while we might look at one index, like the S&Ps, and say, you know what, that really isn't aligned where I would like it to be, I could look at, like we did, the Qs and the Russell, and we could even, I just flip on the Dow futures here for a second, and look at the retracement there. Now, we didn't even look at that then, but the Dow has retraced an awful lot. Now, when we talk about relative strength and relative weakness, this is coming up to an area of resistance where there's going to be sellers. Now, what will those other markets do? This could get interesting. Well, this comes up here. If it starts to dip, theoretically, the others would dip that were showing relative weakness. And that's something we're going to keep an eye on this afternoon to see if that happens. How much does this actually dip? Does it take out these pivots on the 5-minute? I know there's going to be sellers there because that's just the way it is. And you can see the overnight congestion that's there to the left. So it's just such an obvious place for sellers to be. And this bar, you can see, has got a little over 4 minutes to go. And we're getting a wide range bar. So wide range bars, after trending up as many bars as this, would suggest the end of a move. So we'll keep an eye on that, and then we'll see if this rolls back over. So we've got a few things to watch here, in the market indices. I'll just take a peek at semiconductors for a moment since they got really clobbered. They didn't quite get down to that support. And, it's close, and you can see that other pivot over there on the 65-minute, and this is stabilizing. So most of the indices are stabilizing. And for them to start to break out now after the Dow is reaching resistance typically isn't a very good setup. So we'll see how it works out. As always, if you have questions, email us, Greg and Dan at MasterTrader.